This is Spare Time Repair, and these are 4 more CD players I found in local thrift stores. Once again, I'll be looking to repair and restore them all in one video. First up will be this Magnavox CDB-486 from 1988. This is a magazine changer that's having problems with its loading mechanism. Next will be this Optimus CD-5500 from 1993 with a bad loading tray. After that, we'll look at this Technics SL-P127 from 1988. It appears to have a disc stuck inside, but will neither play nor eject it. And to finish will be this Denon DCD-910, again from 1988, which also has tray problems along with a slumped panel on the front that's obscuring the display. I paid less than $50 combined for these players, so there's not a lot to lose, but can I get them all back to full working order? So this one isn't really doing anything. This flap at the front is supposed to pop down and then eject the magazine cartridge. Well, eventually it does it, but clearly there's something wrong there. And normally I'd ignore CD changes in thrift stores. I've got no real interest in them, but I thought this one is probably using a swing arm pickup and therefore has slightly more value. But if it is, it's inverted because I believe you need to load the discs in this upside down. Well, it is indeed a swing arm pickup, so the discs obviously get pulled to the rear for playback. And I'm not sure what revision of the swing arm this is. It might be the CDM4, but that's almost certainly working fine. I haven't found one yet that's faulty. Well, it could be bad belts. We've got a couple here that are quite easily accessible. They don't feel too bad though. And this changer mechanism is all kind of one piece. It doesn't look that easy to disassemble. But let's power it up. Eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that the disc here was labelled side up, which is incorrect. But there was no playback even when the disc was mounted correctly, as we'll see later. Yeah, that belt's slipping, so that's not doing its job. These gears feel like they're moving quite freely, but again I think they're slipping on that pulley. So let's slip this one off. Well, yeah, not surprised that wasn't working. Remove this gear for cleaning. A little bit of gunk in there. And it'd be helpful if I could slip this motor out as well. Yeah, easy enough. Well, there's no debris on that pulley, so we could just give this a quick oil and be done with it. Somebody recommended I get this Horace Whitlock synthetic clock oil. I normally use 3-in-1 oil, which I think is still perfectly fine, but this has got a very long, very thin needle for precise application. So when you've got a pulley like this that's very close to the shaft base, you can still get in there. It's sometimes a job to judge the original belt size when they're distorted like this. So I'll feed that onto the pulley, put it loosely in place, and then snap this motor down. Well, it looks like I should have keyed this post here into this notch. So I'll just lift that up again, twist it round. There we go. So that just stops it rotating, and the other belt was even easier to change, although it looks okay. I should clean this pulley as well to be thorough. All this motor as well. Okay, what difference has that made? Still a bit squeaky. Anyway, let's load up slot 1. Nope, we've still got issues. Well, it seems this behaves differently to the Pioneer magazine changer I looked at recently. That one wouldn't leave a disc in the playback position unless this is just faulty. Now let's press play. No, well, something's just rubbing because this new belt is slipping. You can hear it creaking when I turn this manually. It's So looks like we've got to do a bit more disassembly. This whole area here is just one piece, so I think I'm going to have to remove that whole thing, which means unscrewing this PCB, which is tethered by a flat flex cable here and a connector here. This is an unusual connector. I'm not quite sure how to disconnect it. Oh, that's a clip. I have to release that and then pull that out. Not sure what the DAC is in this. Don't think it's one of the fancy ones. Just remove the cartridge because that's going to impede the mechanism coming out, I think. And there's 4 flathead screws holding it in. Well, hang on a second. Do we have a removable bottom plate? Yes, we do. Perhaps I don't need to do any of this. And on the bottom we've got this sticker mentioning the transport security devices, and that's these 3 red plugs here, which can be kept in these slots in the back for safekeeping, and they go in these 3 slots here when transporting the unit. You can see it was made in October 1988 in Belgium. Well, does that help or not? Well, it gives us access to the lens, but that looks very clean, as you'd expect, being upside down. Got the disc clamp and just a ton of old grease. But yeah, I still think we need to remove this. These are the screws holding down that mechanism. It's loose now, but it's still tethered by these cables. Okay, made a bit of slack. And there we go. I still can't get inside it. It's just clipped together, there's no screws. Philips made nice pickups, there's no doubt about that, but they really love their plastic. Well, this roller here is where the cartridge mechanism appears to be riding up and down. Doesn't look like there was ever any grease on there. Well, I honestly can't see how this thing comes apart, but the more I look at it, the less convinced I am that I want to take it apart. This whole thing is just very creaky. Well, I can't find a service manual for this or the Philips branded equivalent, which I think is the CDC-486. So I am going to remove this bar and just see if I can lift this out. Well, I still can't lift this out, but by working it back and forth and adding some lubrication, maybe we can make it smoother and quieter. If I apply some voltage to this motor, it should do the work for me, because turning that gear by hand isn't easy on the fingers. It does seem a bit quieter. There's a switch at the back here and I can't see how it's being actuated. The brown and black wires are going to this plug here. You can see the leaf connectors, but there's nothing that's interacting with it. The only thing that comes close is this white nylon piece, but there's a gap. Wonder if something's broken off, because even when the disc was in place it wasn't spinning up. Well, I might be wrong, but I'm going to solder these wires onto the switch so that I can short it together during testing if I need to. Now I'm going to refit this in the machine and see if we've made any difference. Well, I just found this piece in the case. Is that anything to do with it? Yes, it is. You can see it's one of these spring retainers. So I think this arm is meant to flick that over. You can see it should be like that. So I think that's why we had no playback. But without this arched spring piece, I'm not sure how I can fix that. Yeah, this piece should be attached here. I mean, there's no way of re-sticking that. Well, looking at this one adjacent to it, it's actually a push to brake switch, because these 2 contacts that have the wires on are shorted until the switch is actuated. And this other one is wired exactly the same way. So these brown and black wires are meant to be shorted until this white rod comes along. Well, maybe I can make a new switch somehow. But let's get this back in the case and see if we have playback first. I'm not going to route all the cables properly, just get it in a position where I can fire it up. Okay, this is a little tricky because when I load it I need to reach over and short those wires together. That's interesting. So if I short them together now, it opens the tray. If I press play, right, I've been doing a lot of fiddling off camera and I've finally got this mechanism apart. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what I did to make it yield. In fact, I probably broke off this. You've got these 4 clips at the bottom here that are hooking into this mechanism. I think that was what was stopping it coming out, and the only reason it did, because I broke one of them off. So there must be a technique to it. So this is rotating and operating this micro switch. And I think those grinding noises are where this was rubbing on this plate here. You can see where it's whiter, where it's sort of been stressed. Because otherwise that is very smooth. But the weird thing is you've got these 3 rollers on this side, but there's nothing on this side. I can't see what it's riding on. I can apply some grease to this bottom piece. It never had any originally. If we turn this a bit further, it will actually lift out. So again, I can grease these up. Can't see that it's going to do any harm. Well, you don't need to watch me do it, but I'm just going to clean up all this old grease because it doesn't look great. So I'll come back when it's clean and re-lubed. And the reason I couldn't get this apart before is that it's obviously locked when it's like this. So it has to be rotated fully to release these catches. And these pieces here are actually what interact with the staircase. So I've restuck this one with plastic weld glue and hopefully it's going to hold. But now I can get in here, I can apply some grease to the rails properly. So since that piece was keyed on here and it's keyed on here, it's no wonder it wouldn't come apart. You have to have it in exactly the right place. I just removed this little PCB that was sitting in here, and there's an optical sensor in here that's counting these notches on the wheel as it turns. Obviously registering which disc is engaged. This micro switch on here doesn't seem very good at all. It's reading several hundred ohms. And again, it's a push to brake switch. I think I'm going to remove that and try and service it. Just taking it apart, contacts are pretty crusty. I thought I was doing it on camera, but I'd forgotten to hit record. Try and clean it up with my fiberglass pencil. And this is the little wiper. Now it's perfect. I'm going to carefully melt it closed again. Now I've got to get these 2 halves back together somehow. This part took quite a lot of fiddling, but I did eventually get the 2 pieces back together. A big problem was that I had this gear upside down, as it needed to run underneath the slotted section like this. But before I could test the player, I needed to do something about that broken micro switch. At first I attempted to make one myself, but it failed because the white nylon piece needs to be able to activate the switch and then run past it. I overlooked that second part in my design. The only answer I decided was to order a proper switch that I could adapt to work. My new micro switches have arrived, and I just checked with the multimeter, and the 2 outer pins are the normally closed position, and then activating the lever opens the circuit. So my thought was to stick something on this metal arm, I don't know, maybe a cable tie-end or something, so that the white piece can activate the switch but then push past it. And this little mounting hole will actually fit over this peg, which is useful, but these 2 pieces are in the way. So I'm going to break those off. It sits there quite nicely. And this gold mark I've made here is where this lever needs to actuate the switch. And I got that measurement off the old switch. Right, I've mounted the new switch and stuck a piece of cable tie to the arm. And this black line on the tape is where the white piece needs to be when the switch is actuated. I don't know if you heard that, but that was the click. And then it's able to push on through. Don't think it's as good as the original, but I think it should work. Okay, we're all back together. I've loaded up the cartridge with 6 discs. So let's see if I've finally cracked it. Let's try disc 2. Disc 4. and disc 6. Well, finally, I think we're there. So let's move on to player 2. So the Optimus just won't open and then just cycles endlessly. And you can see this one's in pretty poor cosmetic condition. Something's been spilled on the lid and there's corrosion on the plug terminals too. But hopefully it's a good deal easier than the Magnavox. These might be the tightest case screws I've ever come across. Real crack on those. As you can see, I paid less than $7 for this. Well, it's pretty bog standard Sony transport. Got a KSS 210A pickup, angled transformer, and no doubt a very bad belt. How do I release the tray? Well, the clip is here where this cutout is. There we go. Not sure how to remove this piece. Obviously it would release if I could get it as far as these notches, but it won't go that far, which probably means I'll have to remove the sled mechanism. I'm going to remove the whole transport. Well, looks like I'll have to undo this screw to remove this whole pivoting piece. There we go. And now this should slide all the way and I can lift it off. And there's a rather slippy belt. Well, before I fit that, I should give this a clean. A lot of dust in here. In fact, I'll remove the whole front panel. You know how I love to clean a front panel. I guess this has been stored in a garage or something. 3 connections here and a grounding wire. I'm also tethered by this power cable, or rather the cable for the power switch. Cool. I'm being lazy and not labelling my screws. Time will tell if I remember where they all go. One hiding under here. And finally we've got the headphone socket. And all these buttons are combined in one moulding. But finally I can give this a good scrub. Well, it's cleaned up okay, there's still some scuffs on it. And the other Optimus player I looked at had a dull logo. And this one's pretty dull as well. Maybe that's just how they were. And I think a lot of Optimus players were made by Pioneer. And this does have the feel of a Pioneer about it. But then the internals all seem to be Sony. Sony pickup and transport. These 2 chips are Sony. So who knows? And I've already refitted the PCB for the front panel. Just for speed, as we've got a lot to get through. And I've just given this a wipe. It didn't need to be cleaned in soap and water because I didn't want to have to remove the PCB. So let's slip on the new belt. Then refit our cover piece. And remount the pickup. Again, the tray front has scuffs on it, but otherwise looks okay. But I think I need to mount the front panel before I refit that. Reattach this. And it originally had a cable tie, so let's fit another one. Ouch. All the other connections are pretty obvious. Lens doesn't look too bad. We'll give it a clean anyway. But I don't think I need to lubricate the sled rail. I will oil the spindle motor though. And finally the clamp. And it looks like I successfully remembered where all the screws went. Click the tray back in. Cleaned up the plug and the lead as best I can, but the lid is a different story. I mean, this is definitely corrosion. You can see the paint has bubbled up. If I can find time, I might respray it. Well, I'll be very surprised if this doesn't work. Let's go with Mazzy Star for 1993. All seems good. So let's move on to the next one. I'm actually quite excited about this Technics because it looks like it has a linear motor for the sled rails. That's always nice to see. I paid $8 for this one, and you can see it's quite shallow. It's not as deep as many players. I should show you the fault first before I take the case off. So it looks like another belt. It's a little less impressive than I was expecting. Looks like a MIDI-sized unit in a full-size case, but we do indeed have linear sled rails. So let's see if it'll open with a helping hand. And the pickup is stuck out here for some reason. It did its focus bobbing, but it wasn't in the home position. So let's see if we can get the transport out. Still tethered by this ground wire. Well, tray might come out if I manually turn this gear here. Looks like the transport lock was on, that's why the laser's not in the home position. So there's a knob here that's been pushed in, and that links to this, which gets caught on the tray. If we pull this out, this is now free to move. Well, I wonder if that was the only reason why the tray wasn't coming out, because as long as that was up, it was never going to move. Let's remove the clamp. Well, with the tray out, we've got access to all the adjustment pots. That linear motor feels nice and smooth. That lens looks pretty dirty. And with the clamp off, the tray just slides out. This is an interesting action. You push this in, and it rotates this middle section here. That's dropping the disc down. Well, that's not a great belt. So that probably was a problem too. Well, my thicker belts are 2mm. My thin ones are 1mm, and I think this is 1.5. So I think this thicker one's going to be too big. Try this one. Yep, that looks good. So it's quite possible that someone donated this player purely because they didn't realise the transport lock was on. Don't know if you can tell, but the lens is very cloudy. Hopefully it's just surface dust. And when they are very dirty, I generally clean them for about 30 seconds, because a quick wipe just isn't going to cut it. Well, that's an improvement, but time will tell. And cosmetically, this player's not too bad. I don't think I need to remove the front panel, so I think we can go straight ahead and reassemble. Even the tray's pretty clean. Also like how there are only 2 connectors for the whole transport. That one's just a friction fit, and so is this one. I found this disc stuck in a CD player recently, but it's from 1988, so I can use it. And who doesn't love a bit of Mannheim steamroller? Oh dear. It's going haywire. Yeah, it's just going backwards. Well, that's annoying to say the least. I was hoping I could move on quickly. If we're lucky, it might be a bad capacitor on the transport board. Maybe one of them has gone short and that's confused the processor. Well, I've removed this PCB from underneath the transport. You can see that linear motor has these wipers on it that run along these tracks here. But I'm going to check all these capacitors and see if anything comes up. Well, we have a bad one. This one looks like it's leaked. There's a bit of residue on the board there, and crucially it's right next to the spindle motor. And on the tester it's showing as open circuit. Just clean up the board. And that one should be 100 microfarad at 6.3 volts. Well, this one's 16 volts, but that shouldn't be a problem. And we have another bad one, exactly the same value. In fact, I think that one's leaked as well. I've checked all the others and they're all okay. So let's give that a try. The new capacitors are taller than the old ones, but I don't think they're going to impinge on anything. I could be wrong. In fact, I think I am wrong. Well, that's annoying. I think I'm going to have to lay them down. But because I've cut the legs short, I have to fit new ones. Alright, they're laying down now. Now I need to resolder the motor connections. And reconnect this. Right, let's try again. And it does take a moment to power up this one. You get everything on the display before it goes to 0. That looks better. And it may have linear access, but without direct track access via number buttons, you don't really see the benefit of it. And it doesn't look like this model had a remote control either. So that's a bit disappointing. But anyway, I'm calling this one done. So on to the Denon, and this one has the potential to be my best thrift store find ever. Let's see the fault first. Well, straight away you can see the display is obscured by this panel that's slipped down. And it's also blocking these number buttons at the bottom. And we've got a bad belt in here as well. But I have tried it with a disc by forcing the tray out, and it does play. So there's no problems there. I'm expecting this to be a quick one. But the thing I like about it is that it's got a digital output and fixed and variable analog outputs. And it also came with a remote, which is almost unheard of in thrift store players. You can see this one was a bit more expensive, but still a bargain, I think. And it's weird, I looked at a very similar Denon player in an earlier video. I think that was the DCD-600, and I really didn't like it. The display was incredibly busy, and the whole look of it just didn't appeal to me. But for some reason, I really like this one. It's just a nice looking machine. Sony pickup, that's no surprise. So let's give the tray a helping hand. And look at that for belt access. I don't even need to dismantle this. Well, if it weren't for that slumped front panel, I think this would be my easiest repair ever. Well, it won't actually slide off there because it's being held captive by this piece of plastic. I think I will have to unscrew this pulley, which has got a nice brass bushing going all the way through. And that belt is slathered in grease, so no wonder it was slipping. A bit misshapen too, of course. So just clean the old grease off here. Ooh. There's loads of it. How did that get on here? I haven't got a thick belt the right size, but this thinner one should be fine. It's a bit twisted, but it will sort itself out. If only all belt changes were as simple as that. Now, do I dare try to peel this off? It's quite thick. In fact, this might be harder than it looks. I don't really want to use a metal scraper because I could scratch it. There we go. I think that was the original adhesive, so I don't know why it's slumped like that. Maybe it was sat in direct sunlight too long. That's going to take a while to clean off. Well, it took a while, but I've got all the residue off the front panel piece. What do I call this? I wanted to call it a lens. I guess it's a filter. The front panel filter. And I've also got the residue off here. And it got a bit scratched in places, but you'll never see it, so it doesn't really matter. And because it's flexible, I'm going to use E6000. I will just check the lens. Well, it looks immaculate. Just oil the spindle motor. And in the Optimus player we had a KSS-210A, and this is a KSS-150A. But I'm not going to mess with anything else because I know it's working fine. So let's see it in action. I don't know whether you noticed that -20 in the display when I powered it up, but I think that's the volume. I've plugged the amp into the variable output, and with the remote control, okay, well that's not doing anything yet. Let's load a disc. But that's a much nicer display than the other Denon I looked at. Table of contents permanence. Yeah, there you go. It's not the fastest in the world, but plenty fast enough. I was going to say it's a monochrome display. We've got this tiny red dot when I use the remote control. But yeah, love it. Really pleased with that. And it looks great too. That wasn't as straightforward as I was expecting, mainly because of that tricky Magnavox. But as usual, I tested all 4 players over several hours and they all seem to be working perfectly. I've already got a buyer for the Optimus, so I did go ahead and respray that lid. It's not my finest work, but it's an improvement at least. The Technics, surprisingly, won't play CDRs at all, but for the others they aren't a problem. The Magnavox is my least favourite because I just don't like changes, and even that swing arm pickup can't save it. The lack of CDR playback puts the Technics in 3rd place despite that linear sled motor, which means the Optimus takes a surprising runner-up spot. It was rock solid in my testing, and I think the new owner will be pleased with it. But the Denon is by far the winner for me. It looks immaculate, plays everything, and the remote control and digital output are the icing on the cake. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.